Hello, this is Brian Cowan
Along with Shannon Duffy, and this is Misplaced Musings.
for the week of I don't know. It's like the end of May. I'm not even going to put a date on this because I'm bad at releasing episodes.
Yes, it is the last weekend in May, and Memorial Day is happening. All those good things, which means the summer is starting,
What did
and that
uh what did you do for Memorial Day, Shannon? Did you do anything at all? I did nothing. I'm technically on call for work right now.
I actually did absolutely nothing. I have not left my room. I am a goblin. I have just sat here and watched an entire season of anime because that's what you do, I guess.
I mean, that sounds fun. Saturday I went to the beach and that was cool, but that's all I've done with my weekend.
Yeah, no, the beach is good. I watched all of season 4 of Hockey, which is a volleyball anime, which is very nice. I enjoy
They
it.
have animes for every sport, don't they?
There's one about kabaddi.
I don't
Uh,
know what that is.
yeah, a lot of people don't. It's an Indian sport that's kind of like tag, where you have to try and cross over and touch as many of the opposing team as possible while constantly going over a kant and not breathing.
What?
So you cannot breathe while you're
How do
on the
they
other side of the court. So they run across and try to tag and get back. But the trick is they can tackle you and like drag you to the ground, and then you're obviously gonna have to breathe because you can't leave. So then you don't get any points for your team, and you're on the bench. But everybody you touch, if you can get back, is on the bench.
this game sounds amazing and ridiculous. It sounds like something a group of like kids would invent.
Oh yeah, comedy's awesome, and they are so athletic. It's a joy to watch. So then they made an anime about it, and I watched the one season that's probably ever going to exist because who the hell's going to watch an anime about comedy? Uh,
Does
except
it
Teeps.
have like superpowers and stuff?
No, they're just playing comedy.
Oh, well
Yeah,
that's refreshing.
yeah. I mean, it's an anime, so they make it look super cool, but there's
I
no like I'm floating in the air or anything.
well that sounds like a good time. I might check that out.
Yeah, it's on Crunchyroll, so if you have that, you can watch it. And if not, you could just put on a hat and go to the high seas if you feel like it, I suppose.
Wow, wow, just encouraging piracy.
I never said that. I just said wearing a hat and going to the high seas.
No, I mean I don't care. People can watch their anime however they want. I mean half or more of anime is just available on YouTube anyway.
Yeah, there are a lot of old shows that aren't uh, grabbed by anybody. They're just floating in the ether, and that's the only way you can watch them. So,
Yeah, no copyright holders.
no copyright holders. But any video games you played in the last week or so?
Um, I went back to Elden Ring because I am having trouble picking up anything new. Typical millennial choice paralysis.
Right.
I installed Disco Elysium and a couple of other things that I am telling myself I will play, but I just haven't sat down to start them.
Okay, yeah. I also played Elden Ring, but I'm done now. It's over. I
Uh
have
huh.
platinumed the video game.
What about when the inevitable DLC comes out, sir?
Maybe then. But for now, it is done.
Maybe then you'd better play because I'm looking forward to some of the story loose ends they tie up with DLC.
That would be really cool. But for now, I am Frodo leaving Mount Doom saying it is done.
What about
Uh,
when we start our PvP league?
just so we can watch the one person that plays PvP on the server demolish everyone. I'll do that. That'll be fun.
Yes, I will also do that. It sounds fun.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
maybe the fact that we are not PvP players means that our play style might be might throw them off.
Oh, we'll get the one round to win because they don't know because we don't even know what we're doing. Yeah, yeah. The no mix up.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I've done that. I've won poker games against pros because I played like an idiot. I mean, then they beat me the next game, but
You
but
get
they were
one win and then you leave. That's just how you do it.
yeah, they're just like you're betting when you shouldn't bet, and I'm like I don't know.
I don't know. My hand was bad here. I like.
But yeah, so you never know. Yeah, I want to play more video games. I will play more video games eventually. That is a promise I am making myself.
Hey, video games are good, and I am actually playing something new for once besides Elden Ring, which is Tiny Tina's Wonderland or whatever.
The Borderlands thing?
Yeah,
I didn't know you liked Borderlands.
I do. I like grindy things if the grinding is like the main focus of it. So a game that's all about that, and I have the humor of a 7-year old. And I've done this thing called getting over myself and having fun with silly humor.
I
Um,
I appreciate that. I've noticed Borderlands has gotten a lot of hate lately, which is weird. It's one of those things where I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna call it revisionist history, but I also want to be like like Borderlands. It was popular. People liked it. Everybody I talked to when 1 and 2 came out were like, these games are a ton of fun, and now everybody I talk to, shits on Borderlands, and I'm like, I feel like you used to like it, and now you've changed your mind, and I don't like that.
well, Borderlands is, according to this list on Wiki of best-selling RPG franchises, it is the seventh largest with 48 million sales.
You would not know that by the way people talk about it.
I mean, to be fair, we also talk to a very particular subsect of people that do things like vote in Lufia 2 for a game club over a Final Fantasy game. Like,
Hey, I am also on Twitter, sir. I see Twitter opinions,
I see the tweets.
which are also not a good measure of how like the bulk of the population feels about something.
Yeah, and this is probably going to come off some kind of way, but when people get really into something, they want it to feel like it means something. So, some Borderlands, for example, does not take itself seriously, and the writing is very juvenile. So obviously, that means it's not good, right? Quote unquote. But that's not the case. If the writing does what it means to do, and the player enjoys themselves while they're playing the thing, it doesn't matter if the joke is about farting or a tooth fairy trying to take the teeth of everything. Like, it's it's fine. It does what it needs to do. Not every single book has to be Infinite Jest. Not every single movie has to be Citizen Kane. Okay, there there are other things that are still as worthwhile. That's my soapbox. I'm off of it.
Hey
I
man, I mostly agree.
it's frustrating. But that aside, what trying to think of any news, and I think besides the basic stuff, like, oh, that Star Wars game is getting a sequel. Who would have guessed? It sold really well, huh?
Hey, speaking of which, have you watched anything new? I was gonna say I watched Obi-Wan, the first 2 episodes of it
I
the other
watched the
day.
first episode of Obi-Wan. Yeah,
I liked them. I enjoyed them.
I feel like about it like I feel about most Star Wars media. I'll watch it if it's on, but I don't care for it.
I mean, I enjoyed it. He's my favorite Star Wars character. Because I'm people say because I'm boring, but
No, Obi-Wan's cool. Yeah,
he so far I enjoyed him. I enjoyed the show. Ewan McGregor is good, and
yeah.
I'm very curious to see where it goes. I also binge watched first volume of the fourth season of Stranger Things last night. That was fun. I I feel like I watch more things than I play lately. But
I can see that. Like I said, I watched a whole anime season in a day, and that's pretty much all the watching I've been doing.
oh, gotcha. So so we decided there's nothing relevant in the news to discuss.
I mean, as far as that we care about, not really.
I mean, no news is good news. Um, so I guess we'll just jump right into it then. The first segment would be yours. So what did you want to discuss today?
Well, as we've talked about before, I'm very into fighting games in general, and there is a release coming out next month that makes me very excited. That release is actually the Capcom Fighting Bundle, which is a game that has a whole bunch of old Capcom fighting games on
That has Red Earth, right? Didn't you tell me it has Red Earth?
it. It does. It has Warzard Red Earth on it.
That is such a weird game to put in anything.
I know, it's beautiful. The games that it comes with are Red Earth, Pocket Fighter, which is funny, or Gem Fighter. Um, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, every Vampire Savior game that's come out, all the Darkstalkers games, Cyberbots Full Metal Madness, and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
Nice selection. Nice selection. I can't complain with that. Are they just straight ports? Is it going to include any like additional material like museum features and crap like that?
Yeah, some use end things. Did you play the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle at all?
I did not.
Okay, it's the same kind of thing. So there's a museum that has remixes of classic songs, different illustrations. So that's all pretty interesting as far as I'm concerned because it has a lot of cool information and art and concept art and fan art and things like that. And a lot of these games were really big, like on release. For example, the first Darkstalkers sold really well in arcades. It did very, very well, and some people say it's part of why Capcom stayed making fighters as much as they did because Darkstalkers performed so well.
Hey,
And
and now they're just content to reuse the main Morgan or whatever and nothing else from the game.
Morgan, Lele, and Felicia are in everything, and sometimes Dimitri makes an appearance. Um, but
Joking aside, it's cool to see Capcom re-release some like these days a lot of people are like, none of these companies are making revisiting their back catalogs, and it's cool to see them do that.
yeah, absolutely. And what part of what makes me love it is these games have a very, very interesting history. Games like Red Earth, which was essentially made as a boss rush for fighting games, which also taught you how to play fighting games at an okay level without explaining it to you verbally. Like it would teach you how to handle things on Wake Up, which is when your character is knocked down, right? And then they have to get up. While they're getting up, you obviously can't move. So that lets the opponent do things like throw out a hitbox as you're waking up, so you have to hold block. The game teaches you because there's a boss that will always do a move when you're waking up, and if you don't block it, you get knocked down again, and it will do it again. So it's kind of an interesting little tutorial on the basics of a fighting game, which I think is actually pretty rad.
That sounds pretty rad.
Yeah, and of course it doesn't always hit the mark, and it's more of a hindsight that they ended up doing it that way, but it's a very interesting experience. It doesn't happen very often. Well, first, like one player fighting games are not a thing that really get made. So an arcade game with that focus was really, really fun. And it's cool that they're bringing it back along with Cyberbots. The everybody knows the main character of Cyberbots because of Marvel vs. Capcom, but nobody knew that Jin rode a giant robot and punched people in the face with it. That was his whole character arc.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Hmm. Yeah, the cool dude that gets naked and glows when his partner died is actually a mecha pilot, and that game Cyberbots is a actual sequel to a beat 'em up, another beat 'em up called Cyberbots, but not Full Metal Madness. It was something else. And Jin's dad was the main character in that game, so the story continues in this one. And then the last one is Gem Fighters and Puzzle Fighter. So Puzzle Fighter is a puzzle game that is really, really competitive. They still have little tournaments for it, and also the game they released one called Gem Fighter, which is taking the little chibi characters from Puzzle Fighter, right,
Hmm.
and putting them in a fighting game with ridiculous combos. You have auto combos, which is where you just tap the button and you just go through a string of moves. And they all wear different outfits. Like Chun Li has a policewoman outfit she'll put on. Uh,
That sounds
Akuma,
amazing.
Akuma's a construction worker. Yeah, it's a really fun little time, and it's got all kinds of little, oh goodness, what's the word? Fan service, all little fan servicey things with the characters in the background, and honestly, Capcom from that era, from like 1992 to around 2004 or whatever, is one of my favorite game developers. And then I don't like to talk about the late 2000s.
What? Why not?
Well, if I ever wanted to marry my arm, I could just look to Spencer for advice on how to do that.
Oh God,
That Bionic Commando game was not good.
it was so bad. It was that era where they were all like, "Let's be more like Western developers," right?
Yeah, that's where we got Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. Even though I know those two games have defenders, to me they don't. They're awful. Um,
5 is better, like, 6 is harder to defend.
I can see enjoying 5 and 6, but I played them and I'm like, what is this? Gears of War or Resident Evil? What's happening?
Don't forget, DMC.
Oh, so I have a hot take on that.
No, I'm not gonna accept anything but that it's bad.
Did you play the remaster?
No.
It fixed a lot of what made it bad as far as gameplay. I cannot defend the story. The story was, you can't fix that unless you throw it out. But the gameplay was actually kind of fun. The combos were good. They made it so you could actually hit things of a separate color and not get blown away, so your combos didn't suck. It was a good change in the right direction, but the rest of the game was really bad. And I'm really really happy DMC5 happened instead later on.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I just want to talk about the fighting collection and what it means a little bit. So all those games, sure. I spouted a bunch of nonsense. Why is it important? Well, one of those games, Vampire Savior or Darkstalkers, is really big in the fighting game community, and everyone wants it back. A lot of people are viewing this Capcom fighting game collection as a test. If it sells well, they might look into some old properties to make a new game for it, i.e., the one that's plastered all over the damn collection, which is Darkstalkers, right? Morgan's right up front, Dimitri's right up front. Like, this is kind of a little test. The weirdest decision though is that they put the main character from Red Earth like right in the middle. Maybe that's what they're really testing, is seeing if we want a Red Earth sequel.
That is,
Uh,
well, maybe that's just, fishing to see if we want more obscure Capcom arcade crap that no one's heard of.
hey, it would be awesome, but a lot of people really want this to do well, so they can actually get a new game in the series. And Capcom is listening to fighting game fans because they're implementing rollback netcode. I'm not going to go too much into what makes it different because that's a whole episode, but just so you know that they used to be this thing called delay based netcode, which essentially kind of like took both of the connections and kind of waited for things to happen and pushed you forward after the delay, which means that it dropped a lot of things and made playing really difficult. Rollback has a different system that kind of rolls the game state back to where it was before the packet loss or whatever happened. So it makes the connection feel a lot closer to actually playing with the person. Granted, if you have like 800 ping, it doesn't matter which one you're playing. But on the lower ping up to like 200 or whatever, rollback feels a lot more natural because of how it's
That
implemented. And
makes sense.
these games all have rollback. They're
Well,
putting rollback
that's
in all of them.
that is good. As a non-fighting game person, um, my only take is if they made a new Darkstalkers, I would want it to be 2D hand drawn or sprite based, and that's not what it would be, and that would be disappointing to me
It
because
would
I
be.
like the way those games look, and they wouldn't look like that. They would look like modern Street Fighter or Marvel versus Capcom games, and they would have 3D characters on a 2D plane, and I would not like it as much.
That's true. They're gorgeous. And the fact that I still love the lore that they were trying to get like Universal Monsters to get the okay and they weren't giving it to them. So they'd be like, okay, let's make a Frankenstein's monster, but his name is Victor. Or let's make Dracula, but the name is Dimitri. So I a lot of the inspiration from the first game was from those classics. So you had Talbin, which is Wolfman. You had the fish character Ruko, which is Creature of the Black Lagoon. You had a mummy, a succubus, a vampire, a yeti. Yeah, that's right. They did have the yeti. Sasquatch. He's a demon. He's awful. Playing against Sasquatch is terrible. Anyway, so they have all these different themes that they executed, and it's beautiful. And I just want more Darkstalkers, Brian. I just want more of it in my life, even if it's not going to be as pretty because they're going to do crappy 3D drawings and stuff.
I mean, I get it, and they're not. So objectively, they look good. Like the new Street Fighter, like it looks good. It's just I have a preference for 2D fighters. Like I like the if you're gonna make a 2D a game that operates on a 2D plane, I would prefer it to be sprite based or hand drawn. Like if it's gonna be more open, like an 8-way run or something, then fine, make it all 3D and cool looking. But I just I
Sure,
miss
sure.
hand drawn sprite based stuff.
So I'm gonna do something real quick, right? So I'm gonna argue that it doesn't look good. I'm gonna argue that SF5 is ugly, and I know that everybody in the audience isn't able to see this, but I want you to Google Ken Masters from Street Fighter 5, and I'm gonna go ahead and just put a picture into our chat, Brian, and I want you to look at Ken's face and tell me that looks good because that is awful. One of those is fixed, by the way, quote
Let's
unquote.
see what this looks like.
It's not pretty. Just Google Ken's face,
That's
Street Fighter 5.
that is what did they do to him? That that doesn't look like the same person.
It doesn't. It looks terrifying, and that is. I honestly think Street Fighter 5 is uglier than Street Fighter 4.
Like
Um,
based on just that one example, I will agree.
yeah.
Uh
So Capcom just needs to stop making 3D games. They can't make them look good unless it's Resident Evil. So just go ahead and draw. Just go bankrupt like SNK and draw really pretty HD sprite work.
who is responsible for Capcom and just giant muscle men?
I'm
Like
I'm cool with that though. Give me the
no,
muscle
I
people.
am to a degree, but like yesterday I was revisiting something on Resident Evil Village with my wife who's a huge fan, and Chris Redfield came across the screen and I was just like,
He gets bigger every game.
what happened to that
So
man? And now I'm thinking about the Street Fighter, and how they progressively are more and more like the Incredible Hulk. And is there just a single creative person in Capcom who's pushing that, or is it a culture thing? Like, why are all their games and the female characters in their games are getting like more curvy, but in like a bulbous way? I don't know.
and some of
It's
them have a lot of big muscles. Like look at Armika's back, yo.
yeah, it's
That's
it's 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 strange. It's a strange. And if it were just Street Fighter, but now I'm thinking about Chris Redfield, and I'm wondering if the DNA for those changes is all in the same place.
maybe Capcom just likes big people. I mean, look at the internet; it agrees. Look at the Lady D love.
Maybe maybe
You
maybe
know,
they like maybe that's something left over from those days when they were emulating Western developers, and they're just like Americans like big men. Yeah.
I mean,
um
I like big people. Big people are cool.
I like a diverse cast, sir.
Listen,
I don't need like Dalsim the Yogi looking like he could like break me in half.
he still doesn't. He still looks like he doesn't eat.
He's got muscles. Don't you start with me.
So,
Like, it's weird to me that the Street Fighter characters look like they could, like, bench press more than the Mortal Kombat characters.
uh,
Like, I don't know. Like, I always thought of Street Fighter as being more grounded, but, like, these are not grounded designs.
oh, see, I always thought NK was more grounded with the character designs because if you look at Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat, most of the Mortal Kombat characters are all human-esque except Goro.
I
And
mean,
then
they started grounded.
yeah, and then you have like Blanca and Zangief. And
Are you saying Zangief's not a human?
have you looked at them?
He just looks like a Russian bodybuilder.
I totally natural too, right? Totally natty. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe. I don't there are some
No,
people,
no, they're
exceptional
not.
people that look like that. I don't
No, they're not.
uh
They do not. That's like people saying Arnold Schwarzenegger
watch
was natural
watch
back
some
when he was.
strongman competitions, sir. But but
They
no, I
just look
don't
like
know.
slightly larger fat men, actually.
It's a subjective thing, but I don't necessarily like the bulk, the bulky designs.
No, I totally get it. I'm a fan of it, but I like the old school like Conan style stuff a lot. So that's
I do
totally
too.
up
I
to
just never thought
interpretation.
it's weird to me to have like Ryu, who is, a Japanese fighter, look like Conan the Barbarian in a karate gi. Like, I'm
And
not saying Japanese people can't be ripped. I'm saying it's like the quick hand thought of the image of a Japanese fighter is not a barbarian wearing a karate gi.
To be fair, everybody in Street Fighter looks like a barbarian right now. So
I know this, and then
unless you're
like
really fat or you're really curvy,
And then,
one of
like I said, you got Chris Redfield. So I want to go look at Capcom's other. In the next Monster Hunter, the handler is just she's going to be a super ripped bodybuilding chick.
I'm 100% more ladies with muscles. Let's go.
I just want diversity, man.
Listen, the trapezoids are different than the biceps. Plenty of diversity.
I
We're
need
good.
I need
We're good.
not muscly people for representation and short people and tall people and fat people and bald people.
Nah, nah, nah. Average sized people need to go away. All right, you either need to be like 4'11" to 5'3" or 6 foot and up. Nothing in between. And you either
I,
need to
I
be real
get out
skinny
of here.
or
Okay,
really
so
fat.
so for the audience, my co-host is freakishly tall.
I am not freakishly tall. 6'3" is perfectly average.
Freakishly tall.
That is
For,
rude. I am small and cute, Brian. Um,
for the record, I am between 5'6" and 5'7", depending on the scale. I usually say 5'6" just because going shorter is better.
I'm sometimes 6'2". Okay, depends on the day.
Like I would rather be wrong and be taller than be wrong and be shorter. Um,
That's fair enough. But enough picking on me for being perfectly average height.
uh-huh.
We, what's your topic for the day?
I forget. So I was just gonna bring up, which I probably won't have as much to talk about as you did, but basically, so playing games today is a little bit different than it used to be for lots of reasons. But one of them is that we pretty much get localized versions of most games these days. Like there's not a ton of like PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games that didn't get brought to America. Um, just because they make fewer of them and they're pretty much all made for a global audience at this point, and they've learned that Americans can appreciate Japanese things. So we get things like weird things like that Tokyo Ghostwire, stuff like that. Um, but going back to as recently as the PlayStation 3, that was not the case. There's a ton of titles for every system, starting with that one going back, that were never localized.
Yep.
And on some systems like the PlayStation 1, it is the majority of the games released were not localized. So these are Wikipedia numbers. Don't know how reliable these are, but according to Wikipedia, the last game released for the PlayStation 1 was in 2005, which brought the total of official licensed games to 7,918. 400 or 4,944 of those were released in Japan, and 1,335 were released in North America.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference between the two. Um, that there are literally thousands of PlayStation 1 games that were not released in America. Um, and everybody knows that, right? Everybody knows that there because we hear about high profile games that get fan translations, or in the case of things like Front Mission and Live a Live, they'll get brought back. Front Mission was released here. What wasn't it? Was the first Front Mission released here?
Uh, on the DS,
I know Front Mission
but not
2 was not.
the Super Nintendo version.
Yeah, and then there's a few other games in the Front Mission. Like we have received fewer of the Front Mission games than Japan has. Um,
Yes.
so some games get fan translations, like Live a Live or something for the Super Nintendo, but there are still such a high percentage of games that don't get fan translations, or if they do, they're incomplete, or even if they get a complete fan translation, they just don't get any attention. And I feel like when I talk to people on social media and stuff, people know, that there are games that fall into this group, but they just do not realize how big it is and how many good games. Because there is also a perception I get from some people that, oh, they brought over the good games, like the games that are good enough to sell. Like the games that stayed in Japan are all either super Japanese or they're bad. Um, and that's just not true. Like,
They're super
um,
Japanese or they're bad.
yeah, like looking at the PlayStation One library, they're like I said, there are thousands, so I'm not going to go over too much. But some big examples, which some of these have fan translations, but things like a big one's Tear Ring Saga, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Yeah.
Made by one of the Fire Emblem creators, and it is basically Fire Emblem but for the PlayStation. Never brought to America. That one does have fan translations though. One
Mhm.
that I just learned of today, which is apparently a high profile game, so I don't know how I missed it, but it's called London. And if I mispronounce this, whatever. London Seirei Tandaiden, um, which is
Okay.
a JRPG that is set in Victorian London. And I don't know anything else about it other than that it pops up number one in a lot of people's like top 10 unlocalized RPGs for PlayStation 1. So apparently people like it. I
Right.
had never heard of it until today, but I already want to play it because it's a
There you go.
JRPG that takes place in Victorian London.
That's a fun little area that gets used on occasion, but I feel like not enough.
For sure. Some of the Super Robot Wars games, I mean, tons of the Super Robot Wars
I
games were
was
not
about to
localized.
say all of them up until
Yeah,
like
but some big ones like one a lot of people talk about for the PlayStation 1 is Super Robot Wars Alpha.
Mhm.
Was not brought over. That game you saw me play earlier this year, I think it was, or last year, Community Palm.
Community Palm looks really
Yeah.
cool.
Not to be confused with community porn, which is what a lot of people see when they see the POM on that title. Yeah, that's a weird little JRPG with like real time combat and some monster catching mechanics. That's it's like a it's it's like a B game. You know, I would probably give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10. But
Yeah.
I had fun with it. I would recommend it to genre fans. Um, Planet Laika, which is another like a quintet RPG. There's one that's been on my list to play forever is Mizuna Falls, which is like okay, so the Wikipedia entry for it calls it an open world game, but I think that's open world by the standards of the PlayStation. But it's like an open world survival or open world horror themed investigation game inspired by things like Twin Peaks.
That actually sounds really cool.
Right? Like there are so many games on our Discord that we're both a part of the for another podcast. Moon RPG, came up 1 month for the game club.
Mhm.
That's another one that was for the PlayStation that was never brought over that like nobody talks about except for that
Well, it
1 month.
it is brought over now.
Oh, is it brought over now? Okay.
Yep. There is a port of Moon on the Switch.
See, I miss so much stuff not having a Switch. Wait, who ported that and why?
The
Like,
original company, I think.
that
Um,
good on them.
yeah,
I hope it
yeah.
sold something.
Yeah. Oh, it's also on Steam now.
Well,
So
crap. Look at me. I'm that I represent our audience who doesn't get to pay attention to stuff, I guess. Um, yeah. Well, regardless, that was a cool game. There's just so many like, and then for anime fans, of course, there like that was PlayStation One era was still when Japan or when America wasn't so anime savvy or anime friendly. We were still getting very few animes. It wasn't quite mainstream yet like it is now. So as a result, there are a crap ton of like licensed anime games for the PlayStation 1
mhm.
for basically every anime you can think of that was popular in the 90s that just weren't brought over here. Obviously things like Cowboy Bebop has a game on there, so does JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like Card Captor, like all those things. Of course, Dragon Ball has several. Gundam has a crap ton.
Gundam has a whole bunch. And real fast, before I forget, I did want to bring up For Moon. It was the original company that got together, and they got with this group called Onion Games. Um, and also the guy that did the translation for it is none other than Mr. Tokimeki Memorial Club 7 hour video Tim Rogers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and bring that up. 'Cause the fact that it got remade by a lot of the original people, like ported, I mean, remastered and ported to new consoles from most of the original staff with a translation done by a huge fan of the game is like a love letter. It's just so cool to see that happen in modern day.
That is like
Yeah.
that was definitely a passion project. I have no idea why that doesn't get brought up more in our RPG Discord. Um,
Because Moon is actually obscure. Like it's not something I would say it's even more obscure than something like Live Alive. Like it's not it wasn't played by a whole bunch of people and fan translated. It was an older game that was really wild, and it started to get slightly more popular because Toby Fox talked about it being a big motivator for Undertale. So then more people got into it, and then it started to get a little bit of a resurgence.
that makes sense. Yeah, with the thing is, I feel like there's a lot of PlayStation 1 RPGs, like JRPGs that are obscure still because a lot of people we get so many that a lot of people just assume, I guess, maybe that there can't be that many that they didn't bring over considering how many they did, but when I'm just going through like ROM lists for like no intro ROMs or redump or something for PlayStation 1, there are so many games that are described as JRPGs that were never brought to America. I mean, most of them are kind of a question mark because it's like I don't know what this game is and nobody has covered it, and the only pages I can find on it are like 4 sentences long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just it's interesting to me, and I know a lot of people are like, well, if it doesn't have a fan translation, then what's the point of even talking about it? Because it's unless you read Japanese, you can't really make it through an RPG. And that's true. There are plenty of though I would argue non RPG games that didn't get brought over. I still play the Japanese versions of like Parodius and Salamander and stuff for PlayStation. That untranslated because whatever. If you can make it through a menu to start the game, that's all you need. Uh,
That's
and I
true. I actually played a whole bunch of SRW without knowing Japanese at all.
nice. I was gonna say I'm sure that you have played plenty of Japanese fighting games. Um,
Hmm.
because again, you don't really need a translation to figure out how to play a fighting game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really actually most of the time those are the versions played for older ones is the Japanese version.
That makes sense because they didn't make all those changes for like
Right.
rental markets and stuff.
Yeah, there weren't changes, and it's also why the Street Fighter characters are named the way they are. So if you play in tournament, the three characters that got their names changed are Bison, Vega, and Balrog. So we just call them what they are. So Boxer, Claw, and Dictator.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
actually the other day in the Discord. I was talking about the Street Fighter 2 animated movie again, and you weren't around, and they were talking about the Chun Li versus Vega fight, and I was like, I need Teeps to drop in and be like, "Don't you mean Chun Li versus Claw?"
Chun-Li versus Claw. Yes, Claw is God. He's such a good character. In
Is
Street
he?
Fighter 2, in Super Turbo, he's the best character in the game.
Oh, you mean from a mechanical standpoint? I was like, he seems
Yeah.
kind of like a douchebag.
Oh, he absolutely is. But from a mechanical they've never made him good again. They fucked up once, and then Capcom's like, "All right, you're getting the Nerf bat, and you're never coming back from this." Like, it was to get into the weeds a little bit. A hard knockdown is a knockdown that you don't get up right away from, so it gives them time to time you right on wake up, like I was talking about before. Claw has a
Gotcha.
move that knocks you down, where he jumps on the wall, comes down, and hits you with his claws. It's called the Barcelona drop. The timing is perfect. If you have good timing, you can hit them, knock them down, and jump back to the wall, and then they have to guess: are you attacking from the left or the right or throwing? So it's a 50-50 guessing situation that you're putting them in, and they can't do anything about it. That's why the character's really stupid.
I mean, from a casual that makes sense. That you explained that well. So they have never done that before. Like again with the character, I take it they
No,
nerfed him.
he's never been that good ever again.
Is he popular?
Like to play?
Well, I just mean in general. I feel like
Yeah, people like him.
yeah.
People like him because it's like, oh, look at this vain, pretty boy.
Oh my god, I hate whatever. Like,
Whatever. The best character is Zangief.
I mean, I like Zangief. I mean, he did get to be in Wreck It Ralph. That was fun.
Yeah, that was a really fun scene,
Yeah,
and the whole
I'm
reason they made him act like a bad guy is
yeah.
because he hated
Just
playing
cuz
against him.
yeah, just cuz you're a bad guy doesn't mean you have to be a bad guy. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, so yeah, basically I guess back circling back around I just wanted to draw attention in case anybody for whatever reason, which honestly unless you do a lot of emulation or you're just into looking at video game libraries, you probably won't know
Mhm.
the amount. And it's not just PlayStation 1. PlayStation 2 even has a crazy number of games that weren't localized. And then, going back at, Super Nintendo, Nintendo, uh more obscure systems. The one I can say, the Genesis doesn't really have many Japanese only games. It basically got localized
Mhm.
across the board for the most part.
Yeah. No. Well, I'm trying to think of all the systems that I really think you're right with the PS1 just having the most.
It does have a
Yeah.
lot. Like the PlayStation 1 and 2 together have a ton. It'd be cheating to name like systems like the PC 98 and stuff that are basically all Japanese. The Saturn I think probably has more Japan only games than games that were localized because
The Saturn does. Yeah.
going through old video game magazines and stuff like Saturn Fan, I see so many games that I'm just like, this wasn't available in America. But if this was available in America, maybe the Saturn wouldn't have tanked.
Maybe. I feel like the Saturn was a losing battle though, because it was a system that was made to make very pretty 2D things in an era of 3D growth, baby. It it just I just feel like it was a miss. And then the Dreamcast wasn't a miss, but Sega is a miss.
No, no, see, okay, so that's a whole episode, but yeah, basically like the mismanagement between East and West divisions of Sega during the Saturn 32X stuff really hurt the company bad. And then yeah, when they managed to get the Dreamcast out the door and basically did everything right, it didn't matter at that point because even though they did everything right and it sold quite well, when Sony announced the PlayStation 2, it basically took all the wind out of Sega sales. Like it was, the PS2 came up behind the Dreamcast and shanked it in the kidneys. Like because so many people like because of the goodwill the PlayStation had built up, PlayStation 2, that's a big deal. Like I'm gonna save money for that. Oh, and it has a DVD player. Um, I
It
mean, there's a
does.
reason that PlayStation 2 is
Yeah.
like, didn't it become the best selling system of all time? If I remember right, it passed the NES or whatever.
Um
I think
I
it's the best selling system of all time.
I think that it might be, yes, narrowly beating the DS.
Oh, I always forget about the handheld systems. But yeah, like
Yeah.
if the Dreamcast had to be killed off, I'm glad it got killed off by the best selling video game system in history.
155 million units.
Yeah,
That
that's
is wild. The next largest selling game system that's a home system was the PS4. Actually,
that's wow.
Sony
The
dominance, Brian.
I know. I'm always preaching that, and then people try to push back on me. But
Yeah,
um,
no, it's the PS2 and then the DS and the Game Boy and then the PS4 and the Switch and then the PlayStation, the Wii and the PS3.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, Microsoft has done very well, and the Xbox is doing very well, and good for them and good for the market, but
Yeah.
they have not yet approached the kind of dominance that Japanese, companies historically have had.
Yeah, the 360 was zero point 0.4 million away from the PS3. So it fought. It
Yeah.
fought hard. It still lost. And then the next highest rated Microsoft product is all the way down at the bottom. So it didn't even make the top list.
Nice, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I'm not a hater, so good. I'm sure they're doing well right now. They're doing very well for themselves. But yeah. Oh, and going back to the Dreamcast, it's another one. The Dreamcast has a gigantic Japanese only library, and that one because so the ROM hacking fan translation scene. I know you're very familiar with them, so they tend to kind of focus. It's almost like a pop their own particular pop culture. So they'll be hot for a particular platform for like an era where
Hmm.
you'll get like so many NES fan translations and then so many Super Nintendo fan translations.
Hmm.
And then you'll have like the renaissance of PlayStation 1 fan translations. The Dreamcast has just not had its obviously neither has the Saturn really had their time to be the center of attention for the fan translation scene, so they don't have near as many
Here's many what
fan
translations?
translate yeah, fan
Yeah,
translations,
yeah.
like, they just don't have as neither does the PS2.
It's getting
It's
there though. The PS2 is getting there. There are some that have been done. I know Fatal Frame is a famous one, I think,
yeah,
that
yeah, it
got
is.
one. There are a few that are getting those. I feel like the PlayStation is getting a lot more now.
I mean, obviously, the anybody listening who thinks about it for a second will be like, "That's because the more modern you get, the more words are in a script." And
Yeah.
that makes translating a PlayStation 2, JRPG is probably a lot more work than translating, something for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, that's true. Except the Super Nintendo has some killers though that did get translated.
It
Um
does, it does.
like Treasure of the Rudra is was a monster to translate for a lot of reasons.
It's just
Mostly because of the magic system. But
it's also interesting, these are not commercial projects. So
no.
people will spend years and years of their lives creating a fan translation that they don't make money off of. So it's that's pretty amazing. And then it does kind of suck that there's still kind of a bias against those kind of translations by a chunk of the gaming community who's like, ugh, fan translations. I won't play it unless it's officially translated.
Which is ridiculous. And another thing that actually doesn't get talked about a lot is if you're in the fan translation scene, there's a lot of drama. and and it keeps things from getting done. For example, we've talked about him on this podcast before, but good old Gideon Ziv, Aeon Genesis translation, right?
Hmm.
They were translating a lot of old SMT games. And then they announced, hey, we're going to translate SMT if. And this was like 2 or 3 years ago. Well, the SMT fan base has gotten terrible.
Yes.
He got threats because he was taking too long, according to them. They said he was terrible. They tried to like mess up his accounts and try to dox him. So he's like, I'm never translating another Shin Megami Tensei game again, guys. Thank you.
That
And yeah,
sucks.
yeah. So we lost one of the most prolific translators in the scene because of people
Awful
being
fans. Yeah.
stupid. Yeah, and it sucks. But he's still translating SRW because he's still a G. So almost every Super Robot Wars English patch for the old games, you can contribute to him. He's pretty much done all of them, and he's the one that brought Live Alive over as well.
Well, I hopefully he gets better treatment from other fan communities. Those SMT people.
Yeah, I don't like to blame communities for things, but the SMT folk are next to Souls people, some of the worst behaved people that I think I've ever
Yeah.
interacted with.
And I mean, they're obviously, there are like I'm a Souls fan, I'm an SMT fan, but
Right.
I'm not toxic. So, but I'm also not part of those communities. So, yeah, it's. It's like because some people, they'll get offended and be like, "What? Well, I like those things, and I'm not awful." And it's like, well, then I'm not talking about you. Um, those particular games do have certain online communities that are just terrible, um, which sucks.
It does suck, and of course, that's every. Not every fan of those games is terrible. For the most part, they're awesome. It's just that there's a very small vocal group that ruins it for other people. But in a more positive note, there are a lot of PS1 games that are getting active translations. They're just taking a long time, like you said, because these are passion projects. You have to be more patient than with a normal release because it's not a team of like 40 people. It's a person after work burning the midnight oil doing this for people. Typically,
Yeah, that's that. Like I appreciate that a lot. Thinking about it, just trying to have the hobbies I have and have a full time job. I cannot imagine sticking to one project of that scope for that long.
it's wild. Like I was talking about the SRWW translation. That was what 7 years. It was a long time that it was being worked on. But I believe that's it for the two topics. Do you have anything you want to finish off on before we move over to the tracks for the day?
Not really. We can go ahead and talk about the misplaced melodies tracks for the week. You can go ahead and go first. I like yours. So.
Excellent. I also like mine. So it comes from a game called Riviera the Promised Land. The game has three different versions: PSP, Game Boy Advance, and Wonder Swan Color. I chose the PSP version of this song, which is called Black Demon Castle Rekurima. Rekurima? I don't know. My Japanese is not existent. However, it is a dungeon theme, and I think it does a really good job of setting the tone. So let's get right into it.
Alrighty. See you on the other side.
And welcome back, everybody. We just got done listening to Black Demon Castle from Riviera the Promised Land. And what'd you think of it, Brian?
Well, first off, I keep meaning not to say see you on the other side because this is a podcast and I can see no one. But as for what I thought about it, and I told you this when I listened to it earlier. So, for starters, I've heard it before in the game. I played that game. It's just been a long time um, since I played it. But that game, that music sounds like the music from another franchise, and I cannot place it. And feel like I will later on, and then I'm gonna DM you and be like, "This was it." But no, it is. I like it a lot. It's it's a bit of an earworm. Like it's not annoying in any way. which I brought this up before, like, so it's not boring and it's
Mhm.
also not grating. It doesn't get on my nerves, and I don't think it's repetitive. Like, and it's complex. Like it has a lot of different sounds to it,
Mhm.
but it doesn't sound overly complex. Like it's not a mess. It's not noisy. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it's very well composed. It's great to have on the background while going around in the evil castle at night.
Yes.
Yeah, and as far as it sounding like other games, the person that made it, the soundtrack for the game, is Minako Adachi. She made almost. She was on almost all of Sting, which is the developer of this game. All of their games, they're all connected. Yggdrasil Union, Knights and Nightmare, and
Wow.
that game is really not good. But and Riviera, The Promised Land, and then something Ragnarok. And those games are all in the same universe, and she composed most of them. She also is more well known actually for her Nintendo contributions because the game that everyone says has the wildest soundtrack, she made most of Black and White for the music, and she also made most of X and Y's music.
Huh. Well, she sounds like somebody we should give more attention to in the future.
Yeah, she just went ahead and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and make these obscure games, and by the way, now I'm gonna make Pokemon's music for 5 years."
Right. I
Like,
want to learn more about how people get jobs making Pokemon music because I'm starting to see that uh that franchise has a variety of composers, which seems unusual to me for like a long running Japanese franchise. They usually get like one main guy.
yeah, Game Freak is actually a really interesting studio that I would absolutely love to discuss. They've done more than Pokemon, and they also are a little different than a few other companies in Japan with how they run things.
Yeah, they did that elephant game and that drill dozer game.
And also an older game called Pulse Man that a lot of people don't think about them making, but they're the ones that made it.
Yes, I like Pulse Man.
Pulse Man's so good. It feels like a treasure game when I play it, which is a
You know,
really, really big compliment.
I
So,
feel like I put a Pulse Man track on one of our earlier episodes. I don't remember, but
yeah,
I
if
like
you
that.
didn't, we definitely talked about doing that.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. So I guess now we'll hop on my choice. So, upfront disclaimer, I have not played this video game. I so it is 3D Dot Game Hero Heroes for the PlayStation 3, which was a From Software game that is trapped on the PlayStation 3. It was never ported to anything, and I don't think it ever will be at this point. It's a weird pixel 3D Zelda like that I always wanted to play, but I have not gotten around to it. The reason I brought it up though is because, if this is Misplaced Melodies and I'm trying to find obscure music, that seems like a good pick, a game that was trapped on the PlayStation 3 and it's relevant because Elden Ring is all popular. And this soundtrack is done by the people from Super Sweep, which we discussed in our Shinji Hosoe episode.
Hmm.
So he
Yeah,
was one of the composers on this game. Unfortunately, I have no idea who composed this specific track because this game has like 5 composers and I couldn't find who specifically did this track. But the name of the track is Ray. If I mispronounce this, then I mispronounce this. Ray Jaku Village,
yeah, yeah.
which
Rejaku, I believe, is pretty close. Yeah.
having not played the game, I can't tell you the context for the music, but I bet it plays in a village. If I had to guess based on the title and the music.
Yeah, it plays in like the foresty hub village.
Oh, so have you played this game?
I have. Yes.
Oh, well, then you share some info with us, man.
It's a Zelda-like game with graphics I don't enjoy, but it was fun.
Gotcha. Couldn't you build? Didn't it have like you created your own character
Yeah,
out
you
of like
made your own
pixels?
character out of little blocks. Yeah.
So it was like proto Minecraft, or Minecraft is already around, so it was like Minecraft inspired. I don't know.
Yeah. So, what year did Minecraft come out?
I have no idea. The 2000s.
Okay, because I'm just thinking because 3D Dot Game Heroes came out in 2009, and yeah, it came out before Minecraft.
Holy
Minecraft came out
crap.
in 2011.
So 3D Game Heroes inspired Minecraft. You can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah, because it looks like, unless this date is wrong. Oh, so the first edition came out in Java edition in May 2009. So they came out the same year.
Interesting. I wonder if that was one of those years where it was all about like the blocks and voxel graphics and stuff.
Yeah, no, but there are a lot of cool things you could do in 3D Game Heroes, like have a gargantuan sword that looks like a plate. It's beautiful. The game was really fun to play, and it's kind of criminally underrated. It just, in my opinion, it looks ugly. So I think the looks of it are part of why it didn't take off.
Yeah, and it was also released in that time when the PS3 was a pariah of a system. Like it was
Yeah.
before Sony turned their crap around. So the Xbox 360 was eating its lunch.
Yep.
And yeah, it was an expensive system, and if you paid, that amount of money for the system, I don't think you wanted to play 3D Game Heroes.
No, no. Instead, you wanted to play Dead Space, which is fair. Dead Space is really good. Oh,
But I guess we can give this track a listen, though.
let's go for it.
Alright. And we're back. Um, so I guess, you've heard this music in the game.
Hmm.
I heard it for the first time yesterday. And what did you what do you think of this game's soundtrack?
I think this game's soundtrack is a lot like the game, inoffensive but not very memorable.
Yeah, that was, when I was going through it, this one stuck out to me a little bit, probably because of some of the samples, just
Hmm.
I don't know, they scratch my itch for something, but, yeah, it was like listening to it, a lot of them, I was like, "Okay, this is just, whatever."
Yeah, this is just effective music for the situation. It's nothing that I'd go out of my way to listen to.
But I do like this one, and I was yeah, so when you play, like, does the music work with the game? Is
Yeah,
it
it does.
cool, cool. Well, that's what we always like to hear, and, if you liked this, check out more, Super Sweep stuff. They make good music.
Yeah, for sure. And if you can find a way to check out 3D Game Heroes, I would. I think
Cough, emulation cough.
ahem, yo ho. But
I mean, the PlayStation 3 emulation's actually gotten really good.
it has, unless you want to play freaking Splatterhouse.
No one cares about the PlayStation 3 version of Splatterhouse.
Excuse me, my name is Shannon, and I do. All right,
Okay, one person cares.
I was playing through the whole series, and that includes the one for the PS3.
That
All
one's
right.
a different continuity, right? And it ends on a cliffhanger, if I remember right.
Yeah, and they never got re upped because it didn't sell well because nobody cared about Splatterhouse in 2008.
Surprise. No one cared about anything in 2008. We were a very jaded generation of gamers at that point.
Honestly, I was just tired of looking at things that were brown, and it was really cool to have a game that had personality.
That's what you had a Wii for, sir.
I got a Wii for Smash Brothers and was really sad because it wasn't as good as Melee.
Aw.
That was that's why I had a Wii, and then a Mario game that I don't think is good as everybody else does. But me not liking Mario Galaxy is for another day.
It is. We'll have a fight about it at some point.
Absolutely, but I think that's it for me. Brian, do you have anything else that you want to cover before we go ahead and close it out?
I do not. Just that, my usual promises that we will try to be more consistent in content creation and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, we are going to try and do that more. We have a YouTube channel, we have a Twitter,
Yeah,
we also
everything's misplaced pod. So if you want to find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, a website, even misplacedpod.com, we got all that stuff.
absolutely we're rolling and good to go. And my personal Twitter is Teeps the Great, and my Twitch is Teeps the Great. If you ever wanted to hang out, and do you have anything else that you want to push for your stuff, Brian?
My personal Twitter is Brian C Nerd. You can find me there, Discord, all that stuff. It's all Brian C Nerd. And no, I have nothing else. We need to come up with like an outro slogan so we can be like, and until next time, and then we say our little slogan.
Yeah, it's still going to be nice. I say keep on steeping for my stream, but we're not TV, so
I'll just like because I listen
oh,
to a lot of other podcasts and they have some solid ones. I'll just steal one of theirs.
that's the best way to do
Just
it.
till next time, watch out for fireballs or something.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just going to end with kaboom.
Kaboom. Okay. Later.
Bye.